I'll do a beat with this.
Hey, yo, this is the ODcast. 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 Hey.
Moment of silence for our dear departed Steve Albini. What's up, everybody? It's the ODcast.
Yes, episode 25. We're doing a last-minute episode since someone passed away, and we should pay some respects to it. Episode 25, correct? I think
Yes.
so. Now you can make that joke, saying now the ODcast can legally rent a car.
That's true.
Remember in episode 21, you made a joke like it can drink and drink and nobody laughed.
And then there were crickets.
Crickets.
And I think you'll get some crickets for that one.
Yes, yes. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. We were a little bit hesitant about making this episode for many reasons. One big reason is that he is a prolific man. He has done so much in his life, and it would be unfair for us to do an homage of his work within how much? Less than 2 weeks? A week period of us just working on it. So that's one hard part. Another portion of it, which we'll discuss more about it later, is that he's a bit controversial with some sexual misconduct or sexual allegations that has been portrayed and since. And
I didn't even know about any of that.
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit. But
so this is again about a friend of his, not himself.
Yeah. Again, so it's
I don't think we can hold people accountable for the activities of people they're friends with.
Yeah, but we'll talk more about that.
Sure, we'll get to that, but I just want to say I don't think there's any sexual misconduct allegations against Steve.
However, I feel like we still need to show respect and homage of him. However, I want to be honest. I remember there was a saying in Jewish traditions and funerals, when you do a eulogy. Normally eulogies is oh, this person is great, and you just show everything that's been done. Mm-hmm. But I've been told, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Please let me know I'm wrong. But I've been told in Jewish traditions, you try to do that, but also try to be honest, but in a respectful way.
So Did you ever find out what the name of that term in the Jewish tradition? Yeah,
I forget what it's called, but it's it's like a more respectful and truthful and semi-painful eulogy. So we want to do that, but also show respect. And also, since we're from Chicago, we at least got to respect someone that died in Chicago.
A lot of people die here, but...
Yeah, but
a lot of people die everywhere. A lot of death in the world, but I think we both have some familiarity and appreciation for Steve Albini before he died. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do too much research beyond what I already knew about him. We've both been doing a bit, but this is not an extensive review of his whole recording catalog or everything he's done.
I try to do that, but it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, you did a lot more than me.
And I feel like I just touched the surface. I'm still in the kiddie pool. Well, I only listened to Big Black and the first 2 albums of Shellac, and I need to.
Shellac in particular has a lot of albums, right?
Yeah.
They've been around. They were his longest running musical project from '92 till present. But I think even they only have 6 albums. I think they're about to. They still are probably going to release their last album. It was getting set for release shortly before he died. So there will be a posthumous Shellac release coming soon. Mm-hmm. But that's not a huge amount of output for someone who's been in the music industry since the mid 80s. That's because most of his career he's been working for other artists.
Yeah.
And has such an admirable, I think, like working class attitude towards the music industry and being an engineer, where he's like, he would never take royalties on even the biggest bands he would produce.
I was gonna say that. Like, I know he critiqued a lot about the music industry, but like he had this like, you're gonna pay me a fee mentality. He's like, I don't care about getting paid loyalties and all that stuff.
Yeah,
which is very astounding for him to say that, because like, did he know that at the time that these albums are gonna be one of the best albums of all time? No, but
I'm sure
maybe.
he knew.
But he just said, no, just pay me this. Like, maybe it's that punk rock mentality, and that's one of the reasons why maybe he's still considered like the greats, because he still maintained his roots.
Yeah, I think just as a technical recording engineer and stuff, he has a lot of talent and great ear for producing. But like you said, I think his integrity and like that punk rock spirit makes him a very influential and inspiring figure, and a very I already said influential, but he like foresaw a lot of the coming trends of music, I would say, both aesthetically, artistically, and like business wise.
Where do you want to start, or should I just ask you questions, because I got some things to ask?
Ask me questions?
Yeah, ask you some questions.
Well, I'm not an expert, but you can try just launching into some topics.
Well, I learned about Steve Albini through you and our mutual friend Ben, and then just knew how he was well known. Like, I always confused.
You learned about him from us? Like, you never heard his name?
I've heard his name here and there, but
stuff?
you guys very like you jumped in the lake with Steve Albini. I was like, sorry for these water references, but like I just dipped my toe, as the wave was coming. Like, I always confused myself, even though they're completely different people, and they look completely different. I always confused myself producing wise between Steve Albini and Butch Vig. Because
they're the two titans of the early 90s alt rock scene.
Yeah.
Just for their work with Nirvana alone.
Yeah.
Butch did Nevermind, Steve did in Utero.
Yeah.
But completely different recording philosophies. They couldn't be more different.
Yeah. So like, so my first question to you, because I seriously legitimately thought that Steve Albini had like a positive relationship with Smashing Pumpkins. And also, I want to... a friend of mine mentioned that every time we do an episode of the podcast, we mention the Smashing Pumpkins. Maybe it's me, because I'm trying to like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like egg you on, because we talk about it a lot. So I just wanted to ask that first. Like, what's the relationship with the Smashing Pumpkins and Steve Albini? Because the reason I'm bringing that up is because I remember you or Ben were talking about drumming sound techniques, like audio techniques, and how Jimmy Chamberlain used SM58s instead of SM57s to do that.
That's news to me. That must have been Ben if he was talking about
these kinds of mics. These are 58s, right?
None of these are actual Shure mics. They're just generic. I think these are Behringers. They're like $20 a pop, like dynamic mics.
But there's like a vocal mic and then an instrument mic, and then and Jimmy Chamberlain used the vocal mics instead, because it has a loud bang for it. And I thought like maybe that's the same thing that Steve Albini did, or like I want to know that. Maybe I'm just confusing myself with certain things.
I'm not sure about that, because SM57 and the SM58 are very similar microphones. I think it's just kind of the form factor and the shape is different. And I don't think Jimmy Chamberlain is a recording technique nerd. He just like goes in the studio and plays amazing drums. He's not particular about what mics are used on his
Who were
kits.
the producers of Melancholy?
Butch Vig did the first two Smashing Pumpkins albums, not Melancholy, but Gish and Siamese Dream were engineered by Butch. And then I think right after producing Gish, Butch also produced Nevermind. And then like I love Butch Vig stuff. I think in some ways I even think he prefer his production to Steve Albini's because he goes for that really hi-fi. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is more a pure matter of taste, but Butch Vig is like this very pristine hi-fi sound and gets perfect takes of everything. A lot of like studio trickery to get a perfect sound. And that suits a band like Smashing Pumpkins, but Nevermind, it sounds a bit too clean and too clear for that kind of music. So Nirvana wanted to go more raw and organic for their final album. We didn't know it was going to be the last one at the time, but and I don't think they knew either. But
do you think Kurt was like, "This is going to be the final album"? On April 4th, 1994, I will pull the trigger. No, I'm joking. He wouldn't do that. That was a bad joke.
I don't know. I don't really know much of what his inner mindset was at the time. Everything you read about the In Utero recording process with Steve sounds really positive and like exciting and enthusiastic for everyone involved. Have you like looked into the recording at all?
I haven't. I don't want to talk about In Utero as much right now. I will talk about it later, but not right now because I want to be in the same field, like about Smashing Pumpkins v. Steve Albini.
Okay.
What's going on with that?
They never worked together.
They're both from Chicago.
Well, Steve is not originally from here.
He's from
Minnesota.
He was born in Pasadena, and then he was raised in not Minnesota, Montana. His dad was some kind of environmental scientist.
Okay. So you did some research.
Yeah, and they're both. The family's Italian, from the northern part of Italy, and he came to Chicago because
he went to Northwestern.
Want to know another famous writer that went to Northwestern?
Who?
I'll give you a clue. He lives in Arizona now. That's a bad clue. I'll give you another clue. He helped write arguably one of your favorite video games.
What?
George R.R. Martin. He was from Northwestern.
Oh, okay. That's a cool fact. Are you talking about Elden Ring?
Yeah, sure. I don't play the games. You said that you played one of those, right? Or I'm confusing myself with the other stuff.
No, I'm just surprised you knew that because you don't talk a lot about video games.
I want to play video games, but I'm scared. Scared of wasting my time, but then I need to stop thinking about that. But this is not about me. Let's talk about Smashing Pumpkins.
There's not much more to add. You can just, if you Google Steve Albini, Smashing Pumpkins, you'll find a few snarky quotes from at least Steve Albini. I don't know if like Billy ever commented on anything Albini did, but there's some like sniping in the press. Steve Albini loved to just like, he was very vocal about stuff he thinks is lame, and he called out Smashing Pumpkins, I think Liz Phair, and Urge Overkill as 3 Chicago bands that he thought were like phonies or like frauds. And it was all, it wasn't like he was just coming after them for no reason. I think it was an interview where he was like, or an editorial piece. He was calling out some rock critics who he thought had no integrity. So he was lumping them in with like all these posers. And he has a point. Smashing Pumpkins are very like trying to get famous and like really wanted to be the biggest band in the world. And for a brief moment in the mid-90s, they succeeded. Like Melancholy era, they were on the cover of every music magazine. So I think he just didn't like that kind of drive for success, like popularity. He thought that was very uncool. And I think that's kind of the extent of their relationship. I wonder if they ever met, both living in the same city for many years.
This is just a thought that came up right now, but I noticed maybe it's a Chicago cultural mentality. But if you notice that people like Steve Albini, Kanye West, heck, maybe even Billy Corgan, and you can name me some other people from Chicago, they always have an opinion, and sometimes the opinion is very controversial. Is it a Chicago thing? I don't know. Like, especially Kanye with the last 4 years. Well, no, his whole freaking career has been saying some very controversial things. Steve Albini's been saying very controversial things. Like he was even like the king of Twitter for a little bit.
No, I think you actually are onto something there in that, like, there's a contrarian spirit to Chicago, because we know we're not like New York or LA, like we're not a huge like cultural center anymore. Maybe at some point in the late 1800s or something, we were the second city, but now it feels like we're falling even lower because Hollywood is in California and New York is always going to be New York.
And we're falling even lower because Houston's population is getting higher and higher. So now we're going to be number 4 of the biggest cities in the world.
So I think people here have a chip on their shoulder, or they're just not afraid to like speak their minds because they know like maybe not as many people are watching and listening, so you can just say whatever the fuck you want and try to get a reaction out of the world.
All right, what is one tweet or thing that Steve said that you were like, you related and you were like, yes, Steve, preach, I like it, yes, Steve, keep on saying that, I'm a fan. There's been things that he said that it makes me say, Steve, no, stop it, Steve. For the love of God, shut your mouth.
See, I've never been someone who follows Twitter.
Neither do I. Neither do I. I don't even have a Twitter account. Or an X account.
I mean, he's said so many things over the years, and some of them I like just disagree and I let him go, but I think he speaks a lot of truth too. But now I think we're kind of getting ahead of where we are with Steve. Like talking about Twitter, like that's just been in the last 10, 15 years, but he did most of his most well-known work before Twitter existed. So have you ever heard of or read a book called Our Band Could Be Your Life?
Yes, that's a great book. I'm thinking about reading it again. Because
did you remember the chapter on Big Black?
I do remember the chapter in Big Black, and I remember being bored.
Really?
Because at the first time when I listened to Big Black, I didn't like it. I didn't care for it.
Yeah.
Now listening to it again, they're very influential.
Like the whole like having a very aggressive, noisy punk band with a drum machine. Yeah. That's like everywhere now. That's music today.
And maybe my ears are being much more apologetic or something, or my soul's being more apologetic. But back then, I just didn't care for drum machines because I could tell that it's fake. Even though my favorite band uses a drum machine for the longest period of their time, but I didn't care because the quality was very good.
Café Tacuba?
Café Tacuba, yes, correct.
Yeah, I can hear the drum machine and stuff. You like it? You don't mind it when they do it because it sounds more real?
It sounded clean. It sounded cleaner. So it just sounded like there was a real drum for me for some reason. But like, I don't know if Café Tacuba was inspired by Big Black. I would say it's a big probability. Let me explain why. Because they were huge fans of Ministry, and Ministry is also another band from Chicago. So if they know Ministry, it's a probability they might know Big Black. But
yeah, I'd be curious to look at who was the first band to really do that, like play live rock or punk music with a drum machine.
I would say Big Black. I mean, if you're gonna tell me like the first band that used a drum machine and played rock music, it would be some kind of DJ doing hip hop stuff.
And I feel like we should clarify, Big Black was Steve Albini's band in college at Northwestern is when it started. And I think from like 81 to, I think 87. They broke up in 87.
Yeah.
And it was 3-piece, 2 guitars and bass, but no drummer. They had a drum machine.
They, Steve Albini being a cheeky little fellow, he did like to credit the drum machine as a member of the band.
Yeah, like Roland, right?
Yeah.
Like the name of the brand, the Roland drum machine. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, very cute, very funny.
And when I've been listening to some Big Black live recordings in preparation for this, and I can feel the drum machine pulling the band back in ways. Sometimes I'll hear a song and like you see the energy of the band on stage, they're going crazy. Steve, all the members have these really funny looking strap-on guitar straps where they go around their belts instead of the traditional over the shoulder. So the energy is really high and they're going crazy, but the drum machine is programmed to like a slightly slower tempo than I think the venue is calling for,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like that. Like, I want it to be unleashed, and the band can like rush if they're feeling it. On the recordings, I don't. It doesn't matter. I think the slower tempos work,
Mm-hmm.
but live, I feel like it's a little bit of a drag sometimes. And all his later bands have a real drummer, so I think he felt the same way after a certain point.
Oh, totally. I mean, one of the benefits of shellac is just how precise the drummer is, and when it hits.
Yeah.
I like the grooves. Would you consider shellac grunge or post punk, whatever the genre is? Just you can tell that like it's inspired by a lot of other genres, metal, punk, whatever you want to call it.
It still has that industrial like precision.
Yeah.
You're talking about the drummer.
Exactly. Oh, that's another. Thank you for saying that. Do you think Big Black inspired industrial metal?
Totally. Yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like it's 10 years before 9 Inch Nails or. Well, I don't know when Ministry got started.
Ministry's around that same time.
So they
Let me look at it.
around similar early 80s era doing that. So Big Black probably wasn't the only band. And because of their controversial nature, like their last album was called Songs About Fucking, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of song titles would be very profane. Steve Albini seems like he just likes to shock people with his titles and band
Ministry
names.
started around 81, so I think most than likely they were band buddies. Like, you know, they played several shows because they're both from Chicago, so they must have crossed paths in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, going about that. Maybe we can talk about this. Like he's kind of a bit of an edgelord, or just likes to say things for shock value, like songs about fucking. And just a lot of the content is just very like, you know, in your face. And maybe that's a punk attitude at the moment. Just talk about it for the sake of it. But like, he's got this nerdy mentality, just trying to like push the envelope. But in some ways I respect it, and in other ways I don't. Like, what's the point of pushing the envelope if it's not productive or progressive in any way in that sense?
I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I feel like you share a little bit of that same pushing people's buttons to get a reaction.
I do, but as I was trying to do some quick research, because again, hard to talk about this guy in a short period. He wrote like an article during the Big Black phase when he was touring in Europe about looking into child pornography. And he's just talking about how mesmerized. I mean, I don't want to use the right words for it, but like, he just looked at it and he was like, "Whoa, it seems like the kids are enjoying themselves." So like, it's very weird to read that, and then trying to like defend him or not, or trying to see like, oh, he's just being a guy full of shock value. But I will defend him in this. Maybe this is a shame on old journalists. Like, there's a lot of time periods where people could have confronted Steve and saying, "Hey, WTF? Why were you talking about this and that?" And nobody did. Nobody brought that up.
Well, I've not heard that quote. He wrote this in print about.
Yeah, in a zine. Yeah.
You're talking about Steve Albini here, and not the guy Ben mentioned, the Peter Soros.
Peter Soros. I don't see. That's
that
the
sounds
thing.
a lot like that guy. Writing.
So maybe, I don't know. See, this is where I'm going, because who is Peter Soros?
He's also a musician and an artist. He went to SAIC, School of the Art Institute of Chicago, in the 80s. And
you're an alumni, huh?
Was doing zines and stuff that sound a lot like what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, and later in life, he became pretty good friends with Steve Albini. And I've heard a quote from Steve where he's like, some of what Peter writes and like his art disgusts him. Like Steve Albini feels disgusted by his friend's art, but he still like really trusts and respects the guy, which makes me a little surprised if it is true that he was writing about child porn himself in the 80s. That rubs me the wrong way a little. That's a little messed up.
I guess that's where we have to do more research, because I don't know that much about Peter, but you told me that even Jamie Stewart was a fan of him, or is it someone else?
Yeah, if you read Peter, I forget his name, Soros or Sodos? I might be Sodos, Sotos. He's got an extensive Wikipedia page. There's no like actual. I think he was on trial for like using fragments, like photos from child pornography in his art in the 80s, and was like arrested and convicted of some kind of offense, but he's never been actually like convicted of anything like pedophilia or producing child pornography. He just like used it in his art at some point and probably never did that again.
I also want to say this, and I'm not defending Steve. I'm not defending anyone. I'm just trying to look at the light of what the culture was of that time. It arguably still is in some ways, but luckily our society is more productive, or people are more productive or progressive about this. Underage sex was very common back then, and especially in the rock and metal scene, and how people started talking like, oh, I had sex with so-and-so who was 12, 13, 15, 16 years old, and everybody thought it was cool, you know? Even in the 60s, like Gary Puckett, like he wrote songs about having an affair with an underage person, and people didn't talk about it until like later. I was like, oh, this is not good. Ooh, you know?
Right, and like if nobody really cared at the time, that must have been like social norms. Like the Beatles have songs. She was only 16.
No,
like,
17, if you know what I mean. When I saw
was
her,
it 17?
Yeah,
I thought it was 16.
No, well, she was just 17.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
If you know what I mean.
So now people would raise their eyebrows about that. I don't think Paul would put that in a song today, but back in the 60s, that was normal.
Does it rhyme with the word mean? She was just 19, if you know what I mean. She was just 18, if you know what I mean. It just the 7 just gives it a nice ring. I'm not defending it whatsoever. I'm just trying to make a funny joke about it. People are not laughing, so maybe I take this back. But
yeah, there's tons of songs like that. My Sharona is still a hit that gets played on the radio, despite being about a young girl.
And also, the Grateful Dead wrote a song about having an affair with a 14-year-old, which Grateful Dead head fans do not want to talk about or do not want to admit it, but it's true. I forget the name of the song, but there is a song about...
It specifically lists the age
14-year-old.
of 14.
Yes. So I'm not
How does this relate to Steve Albini?
Because we're talking about child pornography or child pedophilia, and I'm just saying, I'm bringing this up for the fact that, like, I'm not defending the culture. I'm just saying it's very common that in rock history and music history that people were talking about underage sex.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Other thing that I want to talk about Albini, which, again, I don't know that much. There's a lot of allegations that he's misogynist, or he was misogynist, that he said some very horrible things about women. But then, on the other hand, which not that many people talk about, after those allegations happened, he started hiring people of color in his business. He started hiring women and all that stuff. So I guess he's more of an action person, walking instead of talking it. But he talked a lot, so I don't know what I don't know exactly what he said that was very misogynist, but he does say a lot of things that later on he should regret, or he has regretted. Has he apologized? I don't know.
I mean, if you take the lyrics of Big Black songs and at face value, he seems like a horrible person. And I don't think any of it really was true to his own personality. Like around the time that he was developing this reputation for misogyny, he was like producing albums by the Breeders, like Kim Deal's band. And had great relationships with women in rock music. And there's a quote from Kurt Cobain about when they first met Steve to record In Utero. He was afraid. He had heard things about him being a misogynist, and Kurt's a big feminist and like really would not have gotten along with a misogynist. And he realized after meeting Steve Albini that he's actually like a super nice guy. So what people say in their music, especially someone who's like trying to push the envelope of taste and stuff, it doesn't really reflect on them as a person.
So from what you're telling me, he's just doing it just to poke people, just to piss them off.
Absolutely.
And then like, I think you're going to be shocked to what I'm saying about this because we have these conversations before. But like, I think he's just like pushing the envelope of like, don't mix the art with the artist, and people are mixing the art with the artist. If I make a painting or a writing and I say, "Hey, I'm a misogynist," and it's written by me, people will believe it that I'm a real misogynist. You know, so that's the thing.
All depends on how you do it, how you frame that. Yeah. I think if you literally wrote that on a canvas, people would probably understand it as a joke, because a real misogynist wouldn't say that. They might say something else like. But
that's the thing. I guess people don't understand Steve Albini's sense of humor. He does have a weird sense of humor.
At the time, sure, but like look at the outpouring of love and respect that's come out since his death. Pretty much unanimous appreciation for what he did for music. And I haven't seen really anyone digging up these quotes from the past and trying to paint him as a misogynist, because his actions speak louder. For the last 30 years, he was not a bad person. I think he was a good person.
Yeah. I want to bring this up, but I do want to talk about in utero, but I'll talk about it afterwards. Again, doing research about this, I guess he has said some racist comments, which, come on, Steve. I guess he was very angry at Odd Future. You heard about this? How he just got into a fight with Odd Future?
Oh, yeah, I did read this article, but I didn't remember anything racist in it.
He said the N-word. I mean, look, what happened was the band Shellac was about to be in a van with Odd Future, and they were waiting for Odd Future and his crew to come, and he was getting annoyed because they were late, and then all of his crew came in the van, and they were not being respectful, and he was annoyed.
Right.
And then he used the N-word, saying like an amount of people in the van. Not appropriate to use that word, but I do see why he's annoyed, but it's not cool to use that word whatsoever.
I read a pretty detailed article of that event, and I don't remember the N-word being part of it.
I'll show it to you later. I don't want to say it out loud.
Well, obviously not, but are you saying he said that to Tyler and Odd Future in person, or he said it later?
He said it later.
Because I read the full quote where he was like, yeah, they were rude to me and my band, but honestly, in his place and when he was their age, he would have been the exact same way, because he had that punk energy. Yeah. So he was actually like, the article I saw was he was complimenting them in a way. Like he was saying they pissed him off and they kind of ruined his experience, but he gets why they're that way, and he was the same way himself. Mm-hmm. So I didn't remember anything racist about that rant.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about that later, but or just put a sticky note to that.
He's used the N-word before, and he was actually in a band called Run N-word Run.
Are you serious?
And and
why? See, I'm trying to explain to me what's the purpose of hearing that or saying that.
This was the early '80s, and he said it was based on. He took the movie from a blaxploitation film from the 70s or something, and I think he was just so shocked by the title and thought it was so outrageous that he was like, "I know, I'm going to make it my band name." It was a very short-lived band, and there's a few things in his life that Steve Albini has said he regrets, and that's one of them. Okay. He's like, that was a bad idea. The other one is the name of his next band after Big Black, which was Rape Man. Yeah. Which was also, he's not coming up with these names himself. They're taken from other sources. So Rape Man was a manga, and he just, again, thought it was so outrageous that he had to name the band that. And he also said he regrets that later.
I'm glad that he regrets it, because it's hard as a fan or anyone as a music lover to defend that. And in the end, just let's call it what it is, just white privilege. The guy could, could go with that and still be popular because of his white privilege. Same thing goes with this guy, and I don't want to say his name because I love him. I really love him. Like, out of everyone that I idolize as a musician or composer, anything, this is the guy I idolize with all my life, all my heart, and it's Ian MacKaye. Mm-hmm. Ian MacKaye, I love him, but there's no way I can defend. There's no way I can defend his song that he wrote with Minor Threat, "Guilty of Being White."
I don't know any of the lyrics to that.
Well, long story short, he had a lot of friends that were black when he was young. During that same time period, Roots came out, the TV series, and then out of nowhere, his friends were giving him the business. Like, I hate you because you're white. And I was like, dude, what did I do? We're still friends. What happened? So he wrote a song called "Guilty of Being White" because he felt hurt, all that stuff. But, as time goes by, like, it's hard to defend that song, even though the song comes in a good place because he's not racist at all. He's not racist whatsoever. But,
so far, I don't see a problem with that message of a song. He's expressing the hurt that he feels for being, like, stereotyped as an oppressor and stuff when he's not.
This is where it gets controversial because a lot of, like, skinhead bands and racist bands use that song as their anthem, saying, like, see, I'm being oppressed because I'm being white. And then Slayer, as much as I love Slayer, we talked about this, they covered that song. And one of the controversial... Why
would they even cover that? Half the band's not white.
I know. But they changed the lyric at the last line and said, "Guilty of being right." Again, shock value, like Steve Albini. But, like, just, it is what it is. White privilege. It's white privilege. It's just... apologize and move on.
I'm going to have to do more research into that particular song to understand why it's bad. Like, I could see it taking some wrong turns, but from how you described as the inspiration of it, like what he was feeling, I feel like that kind of expression should be allowed.
Yeah, I see your point, but it's just a very sensitive topic. But I was not expecting to talk about this song while just doing an homage to Steve Albini, but here we are. That's the beauty of podcasting, I guess, where we're just going to talk about whatever. But yeah, listen to that song. I'm curious to know what you think.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this since we brought this up. I have to say thank you to Steve Albini because In Utero, as a teenager, was my favorite album of all time, and it still is as constructed my musical DNA for my whole life. The first record I bought is In Utero by Nirvana, and it's still in mint condition. I still haven't opened it. It's still closed. A friend of mine told me that I should open it. And I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it closed. Maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll buy another In Utero copy and listen to that one, but I'm not going to open that one.
That's like the superhero action figure collector who keeps their toys sealed. Like, are you hoping you can sell it for more money at some point?
No, it's just sentimental value. Like, it's my first record. I don't want to touch it. It still has the seal, everything. I just don't want to touch it whatsoever. But I'll get another one. So
records
you're on her
are
side.
Made to be played.
You're on her side.
I don't see the point of keeping it sealed.
I don't know. It's my first record. I'm just trying to be sentimental about it. I might buy another album and listen to that one. But dude, In Utero is a better album than Nevermind. I don't like Nevermind's production. But somehow In Utero has that magic, and I guess I got to thank Steve Albini for it.
Yeah, it begs the question of like, is it the songs being constructed differently that you like that album more for? Because I think Steve Albini himself wouldn't take credit for that album.
He wouldn't, which is another thing I like about the guy. He wouldn't take credit. He's just like, I did my job and that's it. But Would you think? Would you say? What am I, Mike Tyson now? Would you say that Nevermind, if Steve Albini produced Nevermind, would have been a different / better album?
No, I don't think we might not even be knowing who Nirvana is now if
it wasn't
Butch
for Butch?
Vig didn't produce it, and if it wasn't like a perfect blend of pop commercial sensibilities plus heavy grunge metal. Like if Steve Albini produced that album, they probably would have stayed very underground, I would think, because they would have been true to their natural sound, but they wouldn't have crossed over into the mainstream the way they did.
Butch made it poppy, huh? Butch is a poppy guy.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still got great ear for rock music, and this is something I wanted to bring up, was that if you compare Butch and Steve, Butch Vig is a drummer and comes at the band from like a drummer's perspective, and he wants everything to be like really tight and precise. But Steve Albini is one of the few producers, engineers I can think of who's like a guitarist and a front man for a band. I don't know if there are any others really. Butch Vig has his band Garbage where he plays drums and writes songs, but Steve Albini has an extensive career fronting his own bands and playing guitar, and has a really developed taste and ear for like aggressive guitar sounds. So I just find that interesting. He has like a guitarist sensibility maybe. He's known for his miking of a whole band and like that live drum sound, but his drums are a little like too raw and too noisy to me. They sound like kind of like trashy.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to ask you about his audio techniques for drumming, because I saw a YouTube video where he said that the worst instrument to record is the hi-hat, and he called it, I forget if he called it
or something.
demonic or satanic.
Yeah,
it's the worst thing.
Funny.
So, and then it comes back to Big Black. It's like, I can see why he likes the drum machine, because he can control the sound and how he wants it. But then, like, listening to Shellac, like, how did he record drums for Shellac, and how did he record drums for other bands when he hated the hi-hat so much? How did he do it?
I think you just don't put a mic on the hi-hat. That's you can pick up enough hi-hat just in the overheads that capture all the cymbals. He would do all the standard miking techniques, and he's not alone in like not close miking the hi-hat because it's so loud on its own and it bleeds everywhere.
But wasn't like Motown music very known for how they recorded the hi-hat and the snare? So
I don't
by
know.
that argument, do you think he hated that kind of music? Well, like recording wise,
he probably loved it because that's like real live musicians in a studio.
But he hated the hi-hat.
He hated it when it's too loud and like bleeding into everything. But all his music has hi-hats in it. He doesn't. He's not like, I'm going to make music with no hi-hats. He just wants it to be kind of in the background and something you feel like on the top end, like driving the beat more than just like blaring in your ears the whole time. I
will say that like that's one of the biggest challenges in audio engineer or producer is just how to record the drums, because it's very
so
hard.
complicated. So Steve Albini is known for this like almost like John Bonham-esque room sound. There's a lot of like air around the kit. The snares in particular always sound very trashy and like a. I don't love Steve Albini's drum sounds, honestly.
Really? I thought you were gonna compliment it, because it does have a signature. It does have like the Steve Albini signature for when it comes to drums. From what I heard, like you hear it in the Pixies, you hear it in Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like by Pixies, I mean Surfer Rosa. You hear it in Utero. You do hear it a little bit in Shellac. Like,
yeah, I think that's also changed over the years, because if you listen to modern Shellac records, the drums don't sound quite like Surfer Rosa. That's even more like lo-fi, very roomy drum sound. And yeah, I kind of prefer the clean Butch Vig approach to drum miking. But I think what I respect Steve Albini more for is like the general ethos of capturing what the band really sounds like, and not just like this manicured, carefully overdubbed studio thing. And all his other like incredibly insightful philosophies towards the music business, and not necessarily insightful, but very like he has so much integrity, and like we talked about this earlier, but he takes just a fee to record bands. He doesn't do royalties. So you asked before if he knew if Utero, for example, would become huge, or Surfer Rosa. These bands were hot at the time that he recorded them. Nirvana was just coming off Nevermind, and everyone expected their next album to be the biggest album ever. And he didn't want a cut of the royalties because, in his words, he thinks that's like an insult to the band to be like, I recorded this album for you, now I'm going to take a cut of your money for the entire rest of your lives.
Yeah, I see that.
And I think that's noble, and like shows that he was never motivated by money. And I so respect that.
What do you think of when you say that, like what you just said, and then you said that to a person, and the person reacts by calling Albini an idiot?
Who said that?
No, like just people overall. It's like, oh, Beanie's an idiot, or people like that is an idiot.
Well, if
you should take advantage of it because A, B, and C, and all that stuff. I don't like those kind of people because, like, where is your gratitude? Where's your dignity? Like, you're basically saying that you want to be a parasite to someone else's work. You know?
I mean, that's what the whole music industry is built off of. Like managers, record label people, they all are making a living, and they deserve. People are needed to do a lot of these jobs, so maybe they should be taking a cut. But just his philosophy was like, what I'm doing is not worth me like leeching off of your royalties for the rest of your lives. Like I'm just here for this one or 2 weeks recording session, and then I'm out of here.
And luckily, his reputation from his work has helped him a lot, because even people like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant even hired him to do some albums with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I know Albini's a big Zeppelin fan. I've heard him say some pretty nice things about Zeppelin. But I didn't know.
Good for him.
You said Jimmy Page and Robert Plant.
Yeah, Page and Plant was the name of the band.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's. So I guess what I said about John Bonham drum sound
makes a lot of sense.
True. Yeah. I should check out the Page and Plant.
I'm starting to like Zeppelin, but like one of my favorite Zeppelin songs is the introduction of When the Levees Break. I love the drumming in that, and from what I've read, and I could be wrong, okay? They recorded that in a barn outside, so the reverb was natural. And I love the reverb in that. The reverb is so good. And it's cool to see that songs like that or audio techniques like that has inspired decades afterwards. It's still going. So.
Good. Thanks. Yeah, that natural reverb thing I know is big for Steve Albini, and like I think I was reading about Surfer Rosa this morning. He recorded a lot of Kim Deal's backing vocals for that Pixies album in a bathroom to get more reverb on her voice. It's not like running it through a reverb tank or something, or plate reverb. It's real.
Do you like the Pixies?
I do. I don't love. I mean, I haven't listened to like every one of their albums, but I like what I have heard of them.
There's a lot of people who got their hearts broken by the Pixies. Like they like their stuff, and then they see them live and they're disappointed, or they just have their hopes up for them, and then afterwards they're just like, man, I want my life back. I want those minutes of the Pixies back. But
why? Are they so bad live or something?
I don't know, dude. Just some people get very sentimental about that band, thinking that can change their lives, but in reality they're just another band. I will say that Surfer Rosa and Doolittle, I do listen to them a lot. I haven't listened to anything else afterwards, just because I don't know. I just don't want to get. Maybe they inspired me not to listen to anything else because I don't want to get my heart broken like them, you know. But they're good. I got to listen to more of the Breeders, and he recorded some of the Breeders stuff too, right?
At least one album, maybe their first one, but I don't know how much after that. I've seen him like wearing Breeders T-shirts and stuff, so I know he's really supports them in their music. Should we move on to his poker career?
I was going to say, should we end it with his poker life?
Yeah, sure.
I know that gambling addiction is a big thing, and I got to give him credit for him not getting into it. Like, gambling can ruin your life. From reading the reviews, is he has a very disciplined mannerism of poker, and he did say that poker or gambling is a livelihood, but it's not his life, or it's not what like motivates his life. He still does music because that's his thing, but he does admit that he will put portion of his life to just gambling or pokering, and it's hard to balance that or differentiate that feeling of when you're playing a game versus making money. So good for him for trying to find that.
Yeah, he does poker for the love of the game and the sport. I think the mental challenge of it. He's not trying to just make money playing poker.
The psychology behind it. We were watching a little bit of poker.
Yeah.
Normally, a lot of players, they wear a hat, they put sunglasses on, they do everything they can not to show any signs of like, oh, I'm folding, I'm bluffing, or anything. And he's just like a very straightforward guy. So it's kind of scary when people don't show any kind of, like, don't have sunglasses or anything to mask them. So like he knows how to play the game or how to not show those feelings when playing poker. So
yeah, like fully like wearing shades and covering your face seems kind of like cheating to me. So yeah, I respect him for just pretty much sitting there with his eyes and his facial expressions exposed. Probably the same thing that makes him a good punk frontman, makes him a good poker player. He can just go out there and do what needs to be done without worrying about what people are thinking. Yeah, so kudos to him for also being good at poker. That seems like a hard game to reach like world-class levels at, which it seemed like he was.
So he died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
May 7th in Chicago. I was putting some shellac music on the car. I was taking my niece driving, and she likes to ask this question all the time. Oh, who's playing? Are they alive? Are they dead? Every band I listen to is like, oh, who's playing? It's Prince. Oh, is he dead? Yes. Oh, who's playing? It's the Beatles. Are they dead? Oh, some of them are. Who's dead? So I was playing shellac, and I was like, oh, are they dead? It's like, yes, the guy that's singing and playing guitar, he's dead. Oh, what did he die of? Heart attack. Oh, how did he get a heart attack? Just being a little kid, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's his lifestyle that caused him, because he was in an episode of with Anthony Bourdain. I don't know which one, Parts Unknown or the other one.
I want to see that.
It's a Chicago episode.
That's cool.
Makes me wonder, did he die because of his lifestyle? Did he die because he had a bad diet? Like he didn't take care of himself? Or did he die because maybe the gambling addiction could be bad? Like it's really bad for your heart to play this kind of stuff.
Really?
Who knows? But like this is maybe a PSA for everyone that take care of yourself. This guy was 61 years old. He's still technically young, so be nice to your body.
Yeah, really sad. A lot, way too young to die. And I was shocked that it was a heart attack too, because looking at him, he didn't seem unhealthy. Did you in the Bourdain episode? Does he talk about like liking to eat
Chicago food? Yeah.
Like
they even,
deep dish pizza.
They went to a restaurant here in Bridgeport.
Oh,
so which I was kind of surprised that they went to Bridgeport, because I thought he's more of a North Sider than anything, right? Like living on like borderline Evanston area, maybe Albany Park. I don't know where he's from.
Yeah,
like which neighborhood he is exactly.
I think Electrical Audio, his recording studio is. I thought it was in Wicker Park or something, but I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. It's probably a little further northwest. But yeah, Bridgeport. Do you remember the name of the restaurant?
I can tell you later. I forget the name of it, but it's close by. Okay, sorry if I'm being stereotyped here, but what neighborhood do you think he would live in? Steve Albini. Do you see him as a Ravenswood guy, Lincoln Park guy?
Definitely not Lincoln Park, but I mean, you never know. Lincoln Park was very different in the 80s and 90s.
Now, like because he was still living in Chicago. So Albany Park, Mayfair.
There's not like enough of a solid stereotype about these places to label him. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna go with my answer is gonna be Ravenswood or Albany Park. You're just gonna go with that. I don't know. Okay, cool. All right, fine. Leave me hanging.
Like, are you gonna elaborate at all? Why?
No, just I don't know. No, because one, he's got money. So and if you live in Ravenswood, it has that like suburban vibe, and it's hard to have that suburban vibe in a city. So I'm guessing that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that information is publicly available either, so we'll probably never know. I mean, you can look at where his recording studio is, but and he used to run his recording studio out of a house he lived in, but then I think it got to be too much for him and his wife, like having bands in and out of your house all the time, so he got a separate location for the studio, which I just want to touch on the fact that he was still recording bands up until he died, and he would work with anyone who paid him his fee. Like, he wasn't like, I'm a famous producer, I'll only work with the best bands. If you could afford the rates at Electrical Audio, he could record anyone. You could be like a local band recording your first album, and he would be down to do it.
Yeah, he did.
And I find that very admirable for someone who's worked on the caliber of like records and has the name recognition he has. He wasn't stuck up about his time or his studio at all. And yeah, it's a big loss to the music industry that someone like him is not going to be around anymore. We should have been able to enjoy 20, 30 more years of Steve Albini produced records, and now we will not.
But he's got a lot, so start digging, because he's got a lot. On that note, rest in peace, Steve.
Rest in peace. And thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, yo.